This week, we are welcoming the founder of the Henry's Foundation for Mental Health, Amy Stein, and we'll be discussing Pink Shirt Day once I can figure out how to talk. Thank you so much for being here, Amy. I'm so excited to finally get to talk to you about this kind of stuff. You've been doing so much for people who are living with mental health for a while now, and it's super, super important. That's the kind of stuff I want to talk about, all the things that you've been doing and the foundation. And of course, we're going to get into what Pink Shirt Day is all about, because that's a big part of who we are too, isn't it, guys? Even our logo, it's very important that on our logo, we had the pink colors for Pink Shirt Day. It's something that we were very conscious of. I don't know, I can't speak for everybody on the panel here, but I know in my world, my story is very heavily affected by bullying, and I'm sure as are very many people. So it's important to talk about, and hopefully we'll get into some things that people could do about it. I mean, this is a different age than when I was a kid. And when I was a kid, if there was bullying, you get punched in the eye, you go to the office, and maybe you get in trouble sometimes. Sometimes you didn't. Other times it got a little worse. But nowadays, it just seems so much more coming from all different sides. So we're going to get into that. But first, Amy, yes. I want to say thank you for being here, taking the time to be with us and our small little crew of people that are trying to entertain the world. We're really excited that you're here because I know you've done so much. But maybe you can quickly, before we say hi to Aurora and Mark and Sean, quickly let us know who you are and what you've been up to lately.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me. I am very honored to be here tonight. And no, you do not have a small little crew, by the way.
Well, too many people.
Actually, he just left the room. So
Henry has left the building.
He got bored and left already. So.
Our show does that.
No. Yes, no, it's okay. It was.
He was our one viewer for the week.
I know.
Yeah. He does that a lot during the day too. So, no. So I guess what I have been up to. That's a big story. So we started the Henry's Foundation, supporting mental health through the creative arts. So using photo, video, content creation, could be painting, drawing, any type of creative, really to talk about mental health and really reduce the stigma. And by sharing those stories, getting people to talk about mental health, is really what our goal is. So we really want to use and create a platform for people to share those stories because they're so powerful and absolutely meaningful.
It's so meaningful, so important.
Yeah.
I think I never realized how important it was until I started getting involved in the foundation, and my friend Navi Noom and I did a thing a few years ago called Faces of Hope, where it was very important in my personal story again. But Sean, Aurora, and Mark, how do you guys feel about this world of mental health? And how are you doing? Like, how have you been this past week? I know we've all had some things that we've done this week. Aurora, you shot a wedding, and Sean, you got tires, and Mark, you had a phone call today.
Just one. That's all. Yeah.
And I know I've been doing some crazy stuff. So Aurora, how have you been? What are you up to right now? And how are you involved in this mental health world that we're living in these days?
Yeah. I think that mental health is a very important thing that people need to be talking about on a regular basis. I know that there definitely is still a stigma. It's not as bad as it used to be, but we need to be able to empower everybody to, talk about it, to share their experiences, to not be afraid to talk to other people, whether it's not like a public, audience. It could just be your friend, if you're struggling with something. I think it's very important to just talk to somebody about it, whether it's a friend, a professional, whatever. I mean, I've been good this week. Things have been a little busy, but in terms of I guess mental health as a whole, it has deeply impacted me in many different facets of my life. I've always kind of struggled with anxiety, especially in social situations. I've always been very shy. When I was young in elementary school, I was bullied very heavily. Like, I was the hated kid in school. And it was really because of this one person that just made it that way. And it was really, really hard not having people to rely on, especially in those kind of situations, being scared to, talk to somebody about that. And I think it definitely does kind of tie in when you have an experience like that, or have several experiences like that. It's a time period of your life that's like that. Mental health kind of goes along with that as well, unfortunately.
Yeah, especially such an impressionable time in someone's life.
Yeah.
I mean, those are the years that's the years all the music I listen to is from those years. All the ways I think and process information is from those years. So to be hit on in those years is just the worst.
Yeah. And and then we had Jace on the show. Jace is my middle sibling, and they had a very difficult mental health experience. They stayed in CAMH for a while, which is one of the charities that the Henry's Foundation supports, and just the cause of mental health, like, they really helped Jace, and the cause of mental health just means so much to me. Jace has gotten so much better and gone so much further as a result of the help of people with CAMH and CMHA and other facilities and organizations like that. So and I know Jace isn't the only one. We've had multiple guests on the show who have had similar experiences, and so I try to get involved wherever I can.
Seems to be
talk about it.
Yeah, it seems to be a trend though in a creative's world.
Yeah,
a very cerebral world where people are always, falling into these mental traps that they're so easily found. And I think it's only just recently that we started even talking and thinking about those as being a thing. So I'm glad we're having this conversation. Sean, have you had issues like that?
Yeah. I'm on the same boat as Aurora there, actually. I was bullied a lot through elementary and high school. And I don't know, it took I dropped out of high school because I was like, screw this shit. I want to get the hell out of here. But after I dropped out of high school, I was just mainly really into skateboarding and cars and whatever else. So I think being outside of what I felt was a very toxic environment for my mental sanity, being outside there and doing something I loved with a bunch of people that, really supported me and, really backed me up. And then, after getting, my car and whatever else and going to shows and shit, it's really taken a turn for the better in terms of my mental health, going out and, finding a common ground with people that, may not like my car or, like the fact that I skateboard or I'm a huge nerd or whatever. But at the end of the day, we all understand that we're humans and we all bleed the same blood and we, respect and love one another as, we want to be respected and loved. So it's nice to have that better change of pace. And it sucks that I had to drop out of high school for it.
We all find our path,
Yeah.
We have to find that path that is comfortable for us to travel, the most comfortable path that we can take, because sometimes they're not comfortable at all. And you have to make hard choices. I was just talking to a friend earlier today, and he was he was explaining to me some struggles that he has. And I brought up something that I heard, which is basically, there are no bad decisions. We just have to react to the decisions that we make and make the most out of each one. And that's what you did. I mean, you were in a situation that you had to get out of. You made a decision to move forward, and you are continually making decisions to better that situation. So it's not easy though, eh?
No, it is not.
Have you ever had to have CAMH or any kind of help along the way, or have you thought you needed it and not gone for it?
Not really, no. I mean, the only thing I really did was, aside from buying my car and, funneling all my funds into it, I started Planet Pointless with John. That was the big turning point, because especially when, the pandemic hit and everything and everybody's social cues went right out the fucking window.
Yeah.
It was kind of tough to kind of connect with people. So being able to hang out with one of my best friends
yeah. I experienced a lot of that this weekend with the wrestling world. A lot of wrestlers do exactly that. I mean, they are into wrestling for that mental health benefit of, Brendan, our friend Brendan, who was on our first episode. He was in a match recently after his father passed away, and he was in a match with another friend of ours, Ben Ortmans, Big Ben, and they literally not literally beat the crap out of each other, but Ben got a concussion and passed out in the back room, and it was a serious battle these two had, and it was cathartic for both of them, right? So we do things sometimes like skateboarding because you feel the pain, you can deal with that and move on. You can conquer that pain, and there's a lot of pain that you can't. We're born into situations that we can't control. So when we can finally grasp that control, you got to do it. So you did it. I did it at some point. It wasn't easy for me either. And, it's never easy to make those decisions. That's for sure. Mark, how about yourself, bud? How have you been?
Good. I mean, my life, none of that. It's all been puppies and rainbows, right? So no.
You were the bully. No, I'm joking.
Yeah, no, actually, that's a bit of a funny story. I mean, I was a chubby kid in public school, and I grew up in a time when all the guys had the 70s, all the guys had long hair. And I had like the short brush cut and dictated by, parents. So it was, I got picked on for being chubby, and I got picked on because I was they'd grab you and skinhead, and it was, So as soon as I could dictate, how I wanted my hair, I just let it grow, and it kept growing. So it wasn't until I was well into my adulthood that I cut that. But, aside from school, I've sort of got the perfect trifecta of, I also have a mother who suffers from mental illness, and that wasn't easy to grow up with. Like I remember being grade 5 and riding my bike down to the hospital. I grew up in Newmarket, so I'd ride my bike down to the hospital, York County Hospital at the time, and I'd go visit my mother in the psychiatric ward, and I didn't know why she was there. I just knew she treated me different when she was there. She wasn't, she treated me like I was her child, not an inconvenience, so, but when she was home and not medicated properly or whatever, it was a whole different story. So there's that whole thing. And then of course I ended up in my previous career was very high stress, and coincidentally left me with PTSD. So that's fun. So I've suffered from anxiety from multiple fronts, throughout the years. I've had, before you ask, yes, I have gone to a counselor. I spent, when I'm trying to think, there was events leading up to it, but there was comments that were made by my sister to my wife, and my wife is like, "I don't believe your mom did that when you were kids." And I'm like, "What are you talking about? That's crazy. Like that never happened." And then so one day, one of my previous roles, I drove a lot, and so I'm driving. I've got like an 8-hour drive in front of me to get to like Timmins or something, and I'm thinking about what my wife had said my sister told her had happened when we were children, and I'm thinking like, that's just crazy, that never happened. And I'm driving along, and all of a sudden a recurring nightmare popped into my head that I had when I was a kid, and I'm like, wait a minute. And all of a sudden it was like that piece of information was a key, and doors just started popping open, like just like a storm of doors popped open, and all these memories came flooding in. I had no idea how to handle these memories. So that's how I had to reach out. I call her my foster mom. I went to see her, and she's like, you definitely need to talk to somebody. Like, she says, I'll listen, but you need to talk to somebody who knows. So fortunately, the company that I was working for that ultimately gave me PTSD had a really great employee assistance program. So I contacted them, and they hooked me up with a counselor who was phenomenal and really helped me figure out how to deal with those feelings. So that was how I didn't become a serial killer or something, but it was sorry, I've been watching a lot of Criminal Minds, so but ultimately that's how I became the well-adjusted individual that I am. But that and creative, I mean, I mean, Sean spent all his money on cars, as did I, as well as I spent a lot of money in Henry's. I spent an awful lot of money in Henry's.
That's
Are
why
you
we're such
happy?
good friends.
Are you happy with your purchases, though?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And you had your customer service?
Yeah, but yeah, I always say if anything ever happens to me, please don't let my wife sell my cameras for what I told her I paid for them. Which is it was a bigger joke because Brian knows I pretty much buy everything for Brian anyway, but she's always there with me when I buy it, so she knows what I paid for.
She knows exactly.
It's just a joke,
And you don't want to feel that wrath in case anything came back wrong either. So
yeah, exactly. And then ultimately, I joke about a great many things and a great many things that shouldn't be joked about probably, but that's how I cope. That's one of my mechanisms is to try and make people get a chuckle, and I make myself laugh. I probably make myself laugh more than anything, but yeah, you gotta move on. And you know what? I'm 51 and I made it this far, so this my skin bag is still here, and it's going to be around for at least another 51 years. So yeah, just keep going.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, it's crazy, as you guys are each talking about your story, and I'm sure Amy's doing the same thing, thinking of all these things in our lives that are changed who we are and get us to where we are. For a long time, I had a lot of frustration about that. I think a big thing for me is every year I put on my phone a screensaver, like a motto, get her done, or I shoot for me. This year it's look forward, not back. And a big reason for that is because a lot of the history, and, I love my family, I really do. And I haven't been around them as much as I probably should have been, there's a lot of reasons for that. But realistically, to look back at all the things that I think went wrong or went right, I don't know how much good that does for me. And maybe that's where, some sort of therapy could come in handy. And I know my sister and my nephew and my little brother have all said that, you should talk to someone, but I've got my wife, and, we're a pretty good team, and, she's a good sounding board for me. And I like to think of myself as a fairly logical minded person, and I can kind of work through things. So until I get to that point where I'm about to become a murderous, crazy person, I think I'll keep on dealing the way I am. But a lot of people need these services. And that's why yet another reason I'm so happy that Amy's here, because I want to talk about some of these things and some of these services that are available for people. But first, I want to hear about your story. Why did you start the foundation?
So I would say, I think sort of Aurora and Brian, I think you've heard sort of parts of the story before. But, for Mark and Sean and for the audience, one of the many reasons why I got involved in mental health and why we started a foundation was just it's personal. So I struggle with depression. I think I was diagnosed in second year university, and that's also a longer story. And so my sister Jillian she lives with bipolar disorder. So she came out in December of 2021 as a CEO of Henry's, living with bipolar disorder. And my father, Andy, also has bipolar disorder. And my grandfather, Jerry Stein, he died by suicide in 1977. We're quite sure if it was today, he would have been diagnosed with bipolar disorder. So I only knew him. I was 3 years old when he passed away. So the stories that I hear, I just know he was a difficult man. And probably up until I was about 18, and about the night before I left for university, I went to Dalhousie in Halifax. My dad came into my room and basically said, by the way, your grandfather did not die of a heart attack, which was always the story. And it was actually, he told me what the story was and how it happened. And basically he wanted me to know so that when I went away to school, because it was in Halifax, it was 2-hour plane ride away, my parents couldn't watch me. So if they noticed any changes in me, they wouldn't be able to see that. So he explained sort of what all the symptoms are, what happens, what do you feel like? And this is 93 when I started school. So I now feel old for saying that, but that's when it wasn't a big topic then. People really didn't talk about this. So we talked about it as a family, but we didn't talk about it publicly. And so, I would say a lot of things started to make sense of the stories that I'd heard about my grandfather and sort of some of the family history about why things happened. And, so he wanted me to know what happens when you're either feeling depressed, you have bipolar, what do you do? And it happened in second year university. And I was very happy that my dad had told me, because when you're in that state, you don't realize what's going on. You don't know that you're withdrawing or you're not doing the activities that you used to love. Because I was always very outgoing and athletic, and I was always out doing stuff. And all of a sudden I didn't. So I could sit on the side of my bed for 2 hours and I have no idea that time went by. And I'd get upset over, I don't know what. Like, there wasn't a reason why I was upset. And my roommate at the time, who's still a very good friend of mine, totally politically incorrect, basically, walks up to me. She's like, what the hell is wrong with you? And you know what? She was very direct. And I was like, she's like, you're not doing anything. Like, what is this? You don't sit around. So I ended up actually calling my parents, and they were like, you need to go to the doctor. Like, you have to tell them what happened, tell them about your family history. And I was very lucky that the Dow Medical Clinic, the doctor that I saw, like, they took me the next day and they understood exactly what was going on. So I was very lucky that way. But that's sort of my long story of how I got involved in mental health. But it's just something I have been very passionate about. It's something that's very important. And you know what, I think there's so many of us that need help. And sometimes if we don't talk about it, it makes it that much worse. And we don't get the help that we need.
Well, case in point, there are 5 people in this chat right now, and all 5 of us have been affected by mental health.
Yep.
I think part of that is the group that we attract, that we're all the same type of personality. We like to help people and be heard, and we don't have a problem sharing our feelings like that. So that's not by accident that we attract that type of people. But it's also a good point to say that, like, if you're not feeling right, to your point, I mean, I've been there, the depression, you've got so much to do and no gumption to do it. You're like, I don't know why. I just have no gumption to do it. And you could literally sit there for an entire day, and the day disappeared. And then you get more depressed because I got nothing done. And it becomes a vicious circle. And that's where anxiety can start creeping in, and about what's undone or maybe what's not done properly. So it is so important to reach out and talk to somebody, even if it's a spouse with a good ear, a friend with a good ear, or in some cases like mine. I mean, if you need to speak to a counselor, then absolutely seek that help out, or seek somebody else that can help you find it if you can't do it on your own.
Honestly,
or start a podcast.
I mean, honestly, I feel like everybody, I know that some people choose not to, but I feel like everybody at one point in their life should try at least to go to a therapist or a counselor or something like that, because I personally use the EAP services maybe 3 or 4 times for different reasons. And it's helped me so much. Like, my anxiety used to be so bad. I mean, I still get it. But because of the things that I learn and other things that I learned in counseling and stuff like that, things I use on a daily basis to help me deal with, the stresses of work and family and just life in general. Like, there's so many good little bits of knowledge that you can get out of that. But the problem is that you have to be willing to take part in it. You have to be willing to put the work in and willing to talk and open up. I mean, for the longest time, I put it off and put it off and put it off. And I know a lot of people do the same thing. They're like, oh, no, I'm okay. But once you go in, you make the decision, and you make the decision to, better yourself, it really does help a lot. Yeah, just like hearing all these stories, so I want to empower anybody who's listening. If you have felt anything at all, or if someone has come to you and said, hey, you're not really yourself lately or whatever, just try to like will yourself to get that help, to talk to somebody, because it's really important.
Yeah, I think sometimes I think it's also having those difficult conversations. It's, there's always, sometimes there's somebody that you know that won't admit that they need help. And sometimes it's really having those conversations and approaching them to hopefully that they understand that you care for them and you're not doing this in a hurtful way, that you want them to get the help that they need.
Yeah.
How do you do that? Okay, I'm going to throw something out there.
Yep.
I'm sure it happens every day where people who are really looking for help put out feelers. They put out little tests to see if people are listening, to see if, people will act if they say something. What do you do when you feel those feelers? I like to think of myself as a bit of a vibey person. I can come into the room with somebody and know immediately if something's bugging them, if they're acting different. Last night at wrestling, actually night before last, a friend of mine, very energetic person, we had him as a guest on our show as well. I don't know if I need to say the name, but he was a guest of ours, and I just vibed. I sat beside him. All of a sudden, I just vibed that something was off, and I asked him, and he goes, "No, everything's fine. Perfectly fine." He was in go mode. He was ready to keep recording video for the event. Today, I got a message from him, basically saying, "Yes, you tapped into something, and this is what was going on." And then I just gave him some words of encouragement, and hopefully that helped. But this is the thing: like, how do people see that? How do people latch on? And when they do see that, what's a great course of action for them to try and help that person?
Sure. So I would say, first of all, I will preface this with saying I am not a medical professional. I don't have a medical degree.
Yeah.
So
conversationally.
What I can tell you and what I have learned through the last few years is I think it's very important to always make sure the door is open, that people know that it's open. I think when you're talking with somebody, just even asking how they are, and especially, of course, yes, they will always say, "I'm fine," even if they're not fine. You can always preface it with saying, "You know what? If you ever want to talk, I'm here." Because they may not, Brian, like your friend, they may not talk to you in that moment, but they might email you or text you or call you later to say, "Hey, do you have a few minutes?"
I didn't expect it. It was I'm really happy that he did, It's really important, I think.
Yeah. And sometimes you can either give your own experience. You can offer that out if you're willing to talk about it, because that sometimes will also open up the conversation.
Let them know they're not alone.
Yeah. Like I know when I tell people, what I do now for a living, they're quite open and honest with me, because they know that I understand and I get it. And the fear of being judged or any stigma isn't there. And you only want the best for that person. And I also think that I would say, you also have to be mindful that, people, depending on their background and their culture, mental illness doesn't exist. So it, just making sure that they have somebody to talk to when they're ready. And that they sort of know whether it's, a website, it's, where can they go for help? It's, you might just say, look, if you need something, here are some numbers, whatever, and you can leave it with them. You want to talk, I'm here for you. And they might come back to you and talk. They may not, but they know that you're there. And I think just by saying that and making them aware of that, and just checking in, even sending them a text every now and then saying, "How you doing?" That's quite good.
Yeah. You said earlier is very direct the way your friend approached you. Is direct the right way? Do you think? Like, do you think I'm bad with social, like you say, social cues, Sean. I'm not great with social cues. I'm not great with good timing and saying the right thing. I once told a wrestler that he looked really tiny and small. Not a good thing to do. It was very stupid of me. I say stupid things. It's what I do. But anyway, is being direct a good way, or are you not supposed to do that?
It's probably not the best, but I think it also depends on how you know that person.
True too.
And how you think that they will respond. So my roommate, obviously at the time, like we were really good friends. She knew me. And it probably took that to get through to me. But you know what? If it's somebody you don't know as well, I would not suggest being that direct.
Fair.
Yeah, it's a real tough call because sometimes like you said, you vibe. Sometimes there's something wrong. And I mean, I've had over the years, I've been a manager for quite a few years, and often you have your own office. So often I've come in and see a staff member and you go, "Hey, how's it going?" And they're off. There's something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're like, "Oh, anything wrong?" And they're, "Oh, I'm fine. I'm fine." And then a couple hours later, they come back and they're like, "You know what? I'm not." And it's usually, "Do you need to talk?" And then you go to the office. Did you want to sit down? Do you want to close the door and we'll have a chat and you can just unload. And I don't even know the number of people that have sat in my office and just talked and cried and usually, like I said, I mean, I know you said Aurora, you had it as well, but most companies do have some sort of an employee assistance program that you can get help from, even if it's just a free hour that you can talk to an actual counselor or something like that. But it's quite often people, like, I would never have thought that in that role as a store manager that I would have be I mean, obviously the human resources goes without saying, but to be the store manager and then have to be an ear and a shoulder for someone to cry on was unreal. I wasn't, the first time it ever happened, I wasn't prepared for it at all. But then I don't want to say you get used to it, because you never do, but you get more accepting of it and realizing that I'm not this person's, I'm not their caregiver. I'm not their doctor, but I am the ear they've chosen to bend to get it off their chest. And the best thing I can do is offer them any support that I can. And that may be, and in many times was just me making a phone call or sending an email to the right person to get the assistance ball rolling. So sometimes that's where that role takes you, but it's something that I'm happy to be a part of for anybody that needs that ear to bend. I'm there, right? Because having been through a lot of shit, it's easier to understand somebody else's. And I think, Amy, you said earlier, in some cultures it doesn't exist. Mental illness does not exist, and that's just because they've swept it under the rug. It absolutely exists in every culture, and a lot of cultures, like as a guy, it's taboo to say, "Oh, I've cried."
We're not allowed.
I've shed more tears. I've cried more times. I mean, fortunately, my wife is a nurse, and I couldn't even tell you how many times I've sat on the edge of the bed and just waterworks, whether it be anxiety, depression, PTSD, any number of things that happen in my lifetime that I've cried over. And then when it's all done, you're like, what the hell was I crying about? Like, but it's when you're in the moment, when somebody goes, "What's wrong?" Well, nothing, but everything, all at the same time. And
it comes out.
It's overwhelming. And then it just comes out and you cry and you're like, wow, I lost a contact. And, let's find my glasses now and away you go. But sometimes that's what it takes.
Question. It's great that Henry's, and we're going to talk about Henry's in just a second, because we haven't really talked about the foundation much yet, and I want to get into that. But we are lucky. I work at Henry's, Mark works at Mark's, and we have this structure to help us. Sean, what do we do for people that don't have an employee assistance program? Like, what kind of services are there for Sean? Sean, I'm looking out for you, man. do you ever feel like you need to talk to somebody, or Is there somebody that you feel comfortable talking to? I'm just saying, not you. You don't even have to get specifics. I'm just saying for somebody in your same situation where you don't work for a big company that has the EAP. I'm sure, right?
Yeah. In my case specifically, I really tried to narrow down my friendship circle the last like few years. So like really the only people that actually like give a shit enough to like stick around and, deal with me while I'm going through a bunch of bullshit. I kept those people around, and really the only person that I talk to now about any type of problems is John. Realistically, I'll call him up one day and be like, hey man, like, like, how's your day going and shit? And he'll just be like, good. You're not normally like this. What's going on? I'm like, well, and he usually knows, right? So he picks up on that kind of stuff very quickly. And especially when we go out for coffee, he kind of just snaps to it right away. He's like, you're not you. Like, what's wrong? Did you eat some bad seafood or something? Like, are you okay? So, he's my emotional support John. Is what I call him. Other than that, it's tough, man. Like, I've tried talking to people, being like, hey, like, you got a number for a good therapist, hit me up, because like maybe I'll try it out, see what happens. But other than that, I mean, I preoccupy myself with stuff, right? So my situation now is basically I go outside and I clean the ever living shit out of my car, and I throw on some tunes, and I just kind of I sit in the moment where I can like focus on one thing that's not, it doesn't involve like any sort of like, hardship or
distractions.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like a distraction in a way, but at the end of the day, like when I'm done, like I sleep good at night. I know that, I put a lot of work in to my car, and, I clean the hell out of it. It looks good. And then when I wake up in the morning, I'm going to notice it and be like, okay, fine. So like I was, sad or mad or whatever for no reason, right? So I'm just okay, clean the car, let's go for a ride, right? So it really, I don't find an issue with it, but I know that there's a lot of people that definitely would find an issue with not having those services at hand. I honestly I can't believe how many people will go without finding something like that, or even going without talking to somebody professionally, or even like a friend, or a trusted family member. To me, that's mind boggling. And like, if you can do that, you are made of like cement, like you are brick solid. And that's crazy to me.
Or not, and doing really stupid things elsewhere.
That's true. Also true.
Yeah. So there's a lot of that.
Yeah.
Let's get into it a little bit. Let's talk about what Amy, you are doing with the Henry's Foundation. First of all, for those of you who don't know, Henry's Camera, Aurora and I both worked there. We sell cameras, been around since 1908. For those of you who didn't know this.
1909.
1909?
1909.
She's just a puppy.
I was going to
old.
correct you, but I figured Amy.
1909. I said it wrong all these years.
They were just making sure you were listening. That's
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I was
wanted to make sure.
It was a test. It was a test.
Yeah.
It's been around a long time. Fourth generation, still running the business today. Super impressive to have not only that, but Jillian, your sister, is the CEO of the company, which is another awesome thing. And then for you guys to be so open and understanding, and then not only just being open and understanding about mental health, but start a foundation specifically to help people. That's what I'd like to get into right now. Why start the foundation? How did that come about, and the process to get to today?
Sure. If I can backtrack one question.
Of course.
So you're asking about people who, if you don't have an EAP program, what do you do?
Yes, thank you.
So I would say, though, I'll say, if there is one good thing that came out of COVID, it's the fact that people are talking about mental health more, much more, I'll say, comparatively speaking, much more mainstream, and not as sort of taboo anymore. But there are some services actually that came out of COVID and were created. One obviously that's been around for a long time was Kids Help Phone. So you can call them 24 hours a day. They also, they have adults who call them as well. So you don't have to be a kid. And I think the majority of their calls actually come in between like midnight and 4 a.m. And they will also do active rescues as well. So they know where you are. and there's texting as well. So very accessible. They're also one of our partners. And, there's obviously KMH in Toronto. You can go there. They have an ER focused around mental health, and highly recommend them as well. And there is also Crisis Canada is another counseling service as well that you can call. And there's also Wellness Together Canada. And that is also, it's online. There's a number of other services that I can't go into here because that would take probably the entire podcast.
Yeah.
But I will leave you with that at least. So, yeah.
Awesome.
Yep. And so your question, Brian, that you were asking me sort of was just
the foundation. How did it come about?
Yes.
Why did you start a foundation? How was Henry's involved in that? Like,
Yep.
That whole story.
Yeah, so I would say, first of all, I mean, it's, I think we've always done charitable giving at Henry's, and it was always because it was something, the cause was, it was personal. Whether an employee, it was close to an employee, it was close to the family, it's close to the business, whatever that was, there was always a personal connection to it. But what we didn't have was a charitable giving strategy. So we gave to lots of causes, and they're all good causes. There isn't a bad one there. So we were the title sponsor of the Marvel Koffler Breast Center, the women's golf tournament for 10 years. And we did gun amnesties. We did the Ride to Conquer Cancer. I actually did that one 7 times, which was awesome, by the way.
Yes, I remember seeing all that time.
Yes, yeah, which is awesome. And so we've done lots of things, but if we wanted to actually make an impact, we need to choose one cause, because sort of spreading ourselves around, too thin isn't helping. I mean, it did help those causes, but it's probably not enough. So we decided that we needed to choose one cause, and for us, that was mental health. It's something, that I mentioned is obviously close to my family. I believe it's close to many of our employees at Henry's, and we know in the community, and this was before COVID, this started, and mental health is so prevalent and so important, and can make a huge difference in everybody's lives. So
who would have thought
that is really one of the reasons.
When you started this foundation, who would have thought that COVID would have come along and we would have needed the mental health so much more for so many different reasons?
Yeah. So COVID was not in the business plan actually when we launched. We started this actually, I was on the corporate side of Henry's for 20 years. And in April 2019, we announced that I was going to move over to what was to become the foundation. So nothing existed. And so there was my career change at the age of 45. Was moving to the mental health space and the nonprofit side. So, and that was a year before a year before COVID.
How long did it take to formalize the foundation as like an actual charity?
Sure. So we were actually incorporated I actually started the research probably about 6 months before I left the corporate side. And I wanted to find out if there were any red flags of why we didn't want to start a foundation and why we didn't want to do this. So, do you need $100 million? Do you need all of these things? You don't. You need the passion to do it, and the drive. And I'll say right now, determination these days. So, I would have coffee with anybody who would listen to my story that was in the nonprofit sector. And I called people up that I probably hadn't talked to in 15 years saying, will you have coffee with me? I've got some questions. I have a story I want to tell you. Can you help me out? And I would say almost everyone said yes. Nice. So I was far too caffeinated and probably did this for a long time.
Quite a process.
But
no such thing as too caffeinated.
No. And I was not a coffee drinker until I had kids. So yes. So
yet another reason. Sorry.
Yes. And then it was an activity to get out of my house was to go to the coffee shop. So it happened. So I transitioned in April 2019, and actually in May we were incorporated as a nonprofit under the Nonprofit Act of Canada, and we received charitable status in September 2019. So it was actually quite quick. Most people are quite surprised by how quickly it was done. But I was able to find, I think, the expert in nonprofit law, and I had some seed money actually from Andy and Gabe from the Stein family to start this, and to make sure that I hired, the right people, because we don't have that specialty at Henry. That's not what we do. So I had to go out and find it, and it took, I'd say, a lot of talking to people to find out who are the right people to talk to, and get this started, and make sure that we start off on the right foot.
Yeah, that's super important. I mean, people have to be on the same page for the right reasons, and of course, do the job well, which is a whole different thing.
Yeah.
Very cool. Now, Henry's obviously has many locations. I know that we talk about it on the sales floor to donate to the foundation.
Yep.
So anybody that goes into a Henry's camera store can always donate in the store. But where else can people donate to the foundation?
Sure. They can also donate on the Henry's Foundation website, so henrysfoundation.com. There's a donate button there, and you will automatically receive a tax receipt and thank you letter for really any amount. I think it's over $5 that you'll receive a tax receipt for, and it will go to support the Henry's Foundation and our partners. So you can also donate on Facebook. Where else? Canada Helps, and through PayPal. So PayPal Giving Canada.
Where does the money go? Who are these partners?
Sure. So we have 6 partners. And our 6 partners, also, they were chosen based on the target population, so who they service, so whether it's kids or adults, how they provide support for mental health services. So if their service provide services, research in the case of CAMH, or in the case of Jack.org, it's youth empowerment. And of course, geography. We wanted to make sure that we sort of spread ourselves across the country because there isn't one true national mental health organization. So we have Kids Help Phone and Jack.org. We've got CAMH Foundation in Toronto. We have the Douglas Foundation in Montreal, Mental Health Foundation of Nova Scotia and Halifax, and the Vancouver General Hospital Foundation in Vancouver.
All good people. Absolutely.
Yes.
What was I going to just ask you? I have it right here. Oh, well, I mean, this kind of transitions to the next thing I wanted to talk about, really. The Pink Shirt Day thing. Like, how is the Pink Shirt Day thing part of the foundation? Where did this all start? And how are we involved in it as Henry's or the foundation?
Sure. So Pink Shirt Day is February 22nd this year. And Pink Shirt Day really it's an anti-bullying movement. It started in 2007 in Nova Scotia, actually. So it really started as a very sort of grassroots, a very small act of kindness. I won't say very small, but it was an act of kindness. And it was really actually these 2 teenage boys, David Shepard and Travis Price. Sorry, I'm just reading from my notes here. And their teenage friends in high school who organized a protest because one of the grade 9 boys who was wearing a pink shirt was bullied. So they had they basically had a protest, and everybody wore a pink shirt. And that's sort of really where it started. And their mission really is to create sort of more kindness and a more kind and inclusive world. So whether you're wearing a pink shirt, whatever that is to be yourself. And it's actually a global movement now. So I think there's about 110 countries participating in it now.
Wow.
It's amazing the power that social media can have. It's such a simple thing to do. It's using creativity in a different way, in a very simple way to protest something. And of course, everybody shows up wearing pink T-shirts. These bullies are going to see that and be like, "Well, aren't we the dummies?" Right? Like, it's great that the community was able to join together. I don't know if that would have happened in my school. I think if that was proposed at one of my school's meetings in some way, it'd be like, I'm not going to wear a pink shirt. And they, make fun of the people suggesting it. So it's good that that's able to happen. And there's a lot of change that has gone on. And especially since COVID, I think too, like you've said a couple times already, COVID changed the way people think. COVID has created PTSD in its own way in a lot of people. And I'm still not out of it. Like, I'm still living in that world. I was at wrestling for 2 events this past weekend, and I was the only one wearing a mask, my wife and I, but like no one else. And I don't understand it. And that's part of that whole confusion of what's going on in the world and the way people are thinking differently these days.
Yeah.
But it's nice to see in a situation like with Pink Shirt Day, where all it takes is a little bit of creativity and getting people involved and being inclusive. And you can really fight a lot of this hate and bullying that goes on out there.
Yeah, and I think the bullying piece is also like it has such a strong relation to mental health, and how it affects your mental health, whether you're being bullied, whether you actually are the bully. There's reasons for all of it, and I think it is so important, just the role that bullying plays in the mental health sector, and just how it affects you.
What is your goal for the foundation? A long-term goal?
Sure. So my goal for the foundation, I mean, one obviously is to grow it. We want to be champions of talking about mental health using creativity. So there are people doing it today. I want to do it on a bigger scale, and I want to make sure that we are sort of the leader in this space. We have our stores, we have our social, we've got platforms to make that happen. And I really want to see this through. So that's sort of my long-term goal. One obviously, of course, is providing the funding for that. But it's also actually using, I think, our strengths. And our strengths on the technical side, in the photography and the videography content world, to say, okay, how do we marry the technical side and the mental health side together? So how do we get people to share their stories, and make sure that they're sharing them so there's a beneficial outcome? So you're not re-traumatizing somebody by sharing their story, and you're not just sharing a story for the sake of sharing a story. There's a purpose and an outcome to that. And by sharing those stories is, I think, getting people to talk and open up. So I think that is one of my big goals. But I'd say within that piece is, creating programs and services that are complementary to our partners and to other organizations in the mental health sector. So we don't want to compete with anybody. We want to partner with them. We want to collaborate. I'm not looking to say, you need to come to one of our programs, don't go to KMH or don't go to Kids Health Phone. I would never say that. Also, you don't need, this is for, it's for the public. We know that there's gaps in the system. There's long wait times. There are, I think the average is people get bounced around about 6 to 7 times before they actually get a proper diagnosis and treatment. So what can we do in the meantime? How do we provide people with knowledge of where to seek treatment, how to seek treatment, and what can we do while people are either waiting for treatment, or they've got a creative outlet. So let's harness that with our partners and use our partners as the mental health experts, and we have the technical knowledge to do that. So.
Yeah. It's so true what you said, Amy, about that people bounce around a lot to get like the right diagnosis or even just to get treatment. Like when Jace was dealing with what they were dealing with when they had that big breakdown, essentially. I think Jace went to 3 different hospitals before the third one would take them seriously and actually take them in overnight. So it's pretty sad it got to that point. And I think people need to know that like there are these places that are out there that will, know what they're doing and treat people in the correct way. And if we can have resources for people to know which places those are, I think that's really important.
Yeah. There are wait lists, and it's also making sure that you're on the right wait list. So there are people, sometimes you don't need a psychiatrist, you need a social worker, a therapist. And it's making sure that you're actually on the right wait list, and being able to advocate for yourself, or having somebody advocate for you is very important.
Yeah, having somebody who knows the system and knows what you need and can navigate you to the right resource. Yeah, that would be. So where do people find out those resources? Do they go to these websites, or do they call CAMH and they direct them, or whomever that local partner is? That's how it would work.
So that's the $1 million question right there. And so we do have resources on the Henry's Foundation website. They will be updated. We're working on a new website, so there'll be more coming. But it's honestly, there's Kids Help Phone across the country. CAMH in Toronto. It's really looking at your local resources. And that's actually one of the issues, is that it's not easy to navigate the system because people don't know where to go. Their first call should be to their GP. So assuming they have a GP. And that's where they should go first, because they will help them navigate through the system. Otherwise, if it's serious, you need to go to the ER or somebody needs to call 911. That's sort of the other side. For people it's not an emergency and you haven't seen your GP, I would say if you're looking online, is the Mental Health Commission of Canada. Is also a great resource, and you can search by your city or town.
Awesome. Now I can speak from experience talking to people on the sales floor about the foundation. We get a lot of reactions from our customers telling us stories that they've been through. And in Newmarket, we have the initiative to, when they make a donation, you write a little card, and we put those up. And when COVID first hit and we were in full lockdown, I can't tell you how many times I would just walk around and just read those cards. Just some of the nice things that people had said. That was really enough to keep me going through all that. That plus Aurora, because she was awesome. Hey, not gonna lie.
I love that wall, by the way. I think it's fantastic. I love it.
It's wrapping around the whole store.
It's the whole store now. It's like almost the entire store. You can see it in every direction.
Yeah.
Please send me some photos. I'd love that.
Of course.
If only you had a way to take a photo in that store.
Yeah, I know. We don't really have very many cameras.
We have a bunch of
cameras. Figure out a way to do that.
360 camera there somewhere.
Somebody's an old BlackBerry in a drawer or something.
Yes.
On the other hand of what Brian was saying is looking at those cards and inspiring yourself. There were so many conversations I had with customers, good and bad outcomes. Some people were like, "Oh, I'm so glad like my relative XYZ was struggling and this really helped them, blah blah blah, it's a big cause." And then there were other people on the other side of the coin that said, unfortunately due to COVID, this person I know lost their job and unfortunately committed suicide as a result of COVID, and it really impacted people in a
real way.
In a very real way. And I mean, I appreciate these people, when we say that this foundation is here to help people with mental health and that kind of thing, I appreciate people opening up about it, because the more that people talk about it, the more
it works.
It'll be normal, the more it works. So yeah.
Absolutely.
I feel that too. Yeah. And I think it's nice the way you said there has to be a beneficial outcome to whatever is being done. There has to be a benefit to everything, even like the podcast. Every episode, when I'm thinking about the idea or one of the guys are thinking about the idea, we're thinking, what's the benefit for watching that night? Like why would people tune in, and where could you get that benefit? So it's super important to keep that in mind with any endeavor that we do. So basically what I want to ask you now, if the guys don't have any other questions for you before we get to that, I got some questions that we usually ask at the end of an episode. We've covered a lot of bases here, and it's amazing what can be done with just one person driving forward and being creative with how they're doing it. And that's why I wanted you here, Amy, because I've
you.
seen it from the beginning. Like when we rode to Ottawa together that one time for the Ottawa exposure show. Ever since then, I've seen, you left the company and you were in the background. At least I didn't really see what you were doing. And then all of a sudden the foundation pops up and I've seen you working really hard for it. I love it. I'm just so happy that you did it. And I'm happy to be a part of it. And the next part of the chapter, I'd like to possibly think, is the podcast that we're working on.
Yeah.
So we haven't really talked about that a whole lot. Before I get to the other guys, I remembered I got to mention that. Explain what your vision of the podcast is.
Sure. Well, I would say, first of all, as much as I sort of say, I'm a one-person team with, my buddy Henry in the back there who actually left, got bored, I have some amazing volunteers. So Brian and Aurora, and there's a number of other employees at Henry's, and a couple actually outside of Henry's that have helped me tremendously, and I know will be helping me a lot in the future. So, in these, especially like a podcast, this is something, as I say, like I'm thrilled to be here as a guest, but I can't run a podcast. Like that's not it's not one of my strengths. So,
some would say I can't either.
No. I like it. I love it. I think one of the initiatives actually that came out of this, and we had a couple of false starts with our employee committee because of COVID and lockdowns, and we'd have a meeting, and then the store would close, then we'd start again. I'm like, okay, this is for real this time. The podcast actually came about through one of our leadership conferences. I had a couple managers come up to me saying, you know what, I really want to do a podcast. And this was after a mental health talk. We had Cam H come in and talk to our managers about how do you talk about mental health in the workplace? How do you help somebody who's just coming to you? So, and this sort of just came out of this. When I heard that a couple wanted to do a podcast, I was thrilled. And because to me, that is the essence of, that's our creativity. That is sort of who we are and what we do. And Brian O'Rourke, you're already doing this, so you know how to do it. There's got to be, I think for the podcast is, right now we're sort of working on the objectives of the podcast to make sure that this is something that, as I say, is sort of, beneficial, but there's an impact there. And it's to make sure that what we are doing, we are providing information to the audience, and it's the right information. It's the information that they're looking for and the conversations that they want to have. Mm-hmm. And if we're having those tough conversations, great. But I think so. I think, we haven't launched the podcast yet. We've had a couple meetings about it. But I'm so excited to start this. And we're really, we need to just figure out, and we will, sort of where does this podcast live? What's the objective? Who's the audience? Mm-hmm. And to make sure that we have those pieces, to make sure that we do the best job that we can, and we will continue to sort of, we will launch it and we'll continue to improve it as we go.
So I'll be on for the first episode, yes. And then somebody will take over and improve it after that.
No.
No, I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, but I know, Brian, you've been part of those calls, so I know that I think you've probably got a lot more to add, I think, about the podcast and sort of what it, what shape it could take.
I've got ideas. You know me. Mm-hmm. You know me. I sit up all night and I start writing notes and I start coming up with ideas and then I pitch them out to the world. But the nice thing about this, one of the things I'm really thankful and really excited about is the fact that I don't have to do all that behind the scenes planning yet. There's, like you say, we're going through the process and trying to find the best benefit. So there's brain power behind it that I don't have to be fully responsible for. So that's exciting to me. And not that I'm fully responsible for this. I mean, you guys have had lots of episodes and stuff, but you know what I'm trying to say. When you come up with an idea for a show, you feel like you have to massage it and come to fruition with this idea. So it's nice having other people massaging it. as in like the Henry's Foundation.
Yes.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Strike that. Rewind. Anyway,
Yeah.
Mark is just not saying anything. Thank you. All right, moving on.
Yeah.
We've got some questions for you, but before that, Aurora, Sean, Mark, anything you would like to talk to Amy about before we get to our questions?
Amy, where can people follow the podcast? Follow the foundation and the socials, the website, whatnot.
Sure. So website is henrysfoundation.com. We also have a French website as well. So we are bilingual. And on social, just it's English only. We are the Henry's Foundation. So there is one in the States, but we are the Henry's Foundation in Canada. So you will see us pop up there, and you'll see a little logo of the brain in orange.
The number one Henry's Foundation, for sure.
Yes.
Number one. Mark?
I just want to say thanks again for being here, and thank you very much for your time. I know it's a very important topic that we cover, and it's not always the most fun topic to talk about, but it's absolutely one that needs to be talked about. And thank you for being here, and thank you for everything you do for the foundation and for helping people that need help.
Yeah, no, thank you for this, and thank you, Mark, for being so open, and Brian, Aurora, and Sean for having this podcast, having me on, and making this easy, and a pleasure speaking with you.
Nice.
And I want to thank you for sharing your stories with me. So.
Thank you, Sean. Anything?
I want to say thank you as well. And also, coming from a huge nerd, I wanted to tell you that you are an actual superhero for even coming up with this idea and being able to, reach out to so many people across Canada and hopefully more than Canada, and talk about something that is, sweeping the world very quickly. Right. So I think you should have your own comic book made up because you're a real life superhero for helping all these people straight up.
I get the visuals in my head.
I know. Yeah. I'm like, I don't think anybody's ever said that about me. I'm like, I'm just really honored. And if that's to get me back on the show, absolutely.
Amy, the mental health hero, and her sidekick, Henry.
There you go.
There you go.
Exactly.
Done deal.
Yeah.
We're going to get some fan art on that, hopefully. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
If you wonder why emails
watches this do that, please.
Sorry?
I said, can someone who watches this please do that?
Yeah.
Who has artistic talent? I do not.
Yeah. So if you wonder why sometimes it takes me a while to get back on email, I'm a little overloaded, and I'm trying to offload to Henry, and it's not working.
Henry.
It's really hard to find good help.
She's got the two paws to hit the keys with, though.
Yeah.
So.
You gotta get a monkey. They have thumbs.
Yeah. He falls asleep on the job. He's easily distracted.
But he's super cute, and he's your mental health helper. So
Yes,
You
he gets
got
by
it.
in his looks, and that's why I hired him. So
that's right. That's okay. That's the way most of the world works anyway, isn't it? Everybody just
That's
gets
right.
by on their looks. Yeah. All right.
That's
So on to the questions.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
these are the same three questions that we generally ask all of our guests.
Yeah.
The first, I don't know if you saw on the email that I sent you about the challenge.
Yes.
Did you happen to think of a challenge you'd like to issue our viewers, listeners?
Sure, I did, and of course, it would be about mental health. I would say actually is, I have two challenges. I'd say the first one is really focusing. Take the next. This is a weekly challenge. Take this week and think about what your priorities are, like what makes you happy. Do something nice for yourself, and if that's scheduling, whether it's a walk, a photo shoot, whatever that is, cleaning your car, then that's what you need to schedule, and schedule that first in your calendar before you do anything else. So you leave time for yourself, as opposed to putting work in there first. Put something for yourself in first. My other challenge would be is reach out to a friend or family member. See how they're doing. Just send them a text saying, how you doing? And you know what? If you can actually see them in person, great. But at least reaching out to somebody, I think goes a very long way.
Awesome. I'm going to do both of those.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
All right. Now, the questions you don't know about, unless you've watched our show to the very end.
Okay.
Ha, ha, ha.
I'm like, oh no.
I haven't even.
I'm
done
like-
that, so.
I'm a little concerned
Are
about the
these the
questions
new
I'm about
ones,
to get.
Brian, or the old ones?
No, I'm gonna stick with the old ones. I think the new ones were fine for just our hosts and stuff, but
Okay.
they're a little bit, I don't know, a little
Yeah,
tough.
it was Mark's hot take that threw the whole thing out the window.
Yeah, Mark's hot take went on forever. Okay, so the questions that we've asked in 70 episodes that nobody has watched to the very end to answer these. I'm just ranting now. All right, first off, what is your jam? What is that one song that you just can't live without? It comes on every time, you can't skip it. It's just, you love it. It gets you motivated. What's your jam?
That is a very good question.
It's always the hardest of
You
the
know
three
what?
to answer.
I know. I'm trying to think of like how many songs do I listen to on repeat, while I'm working here.
Let me let that digest for a couple seconds. I'll ask you the other question.
Yeah, ask me the other question first. Yes.
All right, cool. The other question
is there a multiple choice answer?
no multiple choice. We
All right.
get it. Pull it out of the thin air.
All right.
The last question is tools of the trade. What do you consider something that you rely on? Doesn't have to be a physical tool. It can be an emotional or mental tool.
Yep.
What do you rely on day in and day out to help you be you?
One, you know what? For me, actually, it's being active. For me, actually, sitting at my desk, I find hard. You know what? And I think my back probably hurts. I'm actually worse when I'm sitting at a desk all day. So for me, maybe it's not day in, day out, but it's for me actually. My outlet actually is skiing, and I still do. I taught for 10 years, and I do ski racing in
Nice.
the Big Kids League. So kind of a beer league. I race for one free beer ticket, so it's amazing what I'll do for one beer. But it's, and I think it's the skiing and cycling and rowing for me is they're sort of sports where you're so involved that you can't think about something else, because if you do, you're going to crash. So, you've got to pay attention, and you can't have the other distractions and all your other thoughts about what am I supposed to be doing today? And what else do I have to do tomorrow coming into your head? You can only focus on those pieces. So for me, it's trying to get better at those things. And there's always something to work on. So when I go out on the weekends and I go skiing, it's, that might be some stupid little thing, but it makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
And it's I'm still waiting for my call from the national team, and they've lost my phone number, my email maybe numerous times.
Jerks.
But I think for me, I think it's the idea of sort of going outside and just being physically active for me.
Nice. I like that. And it's very much like what Sean does, cleaning the car, just getting out there and going for a drive. Or I do that too. I'll just get in the car. I may not have such a pretty car as Sean, but I'll definitely go for a drive. My car's named the Bullet, not Lucille. So
I like it.
Completely different thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's awesome. Very good. Very good. Jam, have you thought about that song yet?
Yeah, I was looking at my Spotify list. So
that helps.
Bless Spotify.
Spotify list is just all the Expressions podcast episodes.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. It's you know what I think? Oh, I just started playing.
Copyright laws. Don't play it. Don't play it.
No. It was just in the background. It was Henry pressed play. It wasn't me.
Oh yes, I'll blame Henry.
Yeah, you know what? I think it's and I'm trying to find what did I have? My top songs now of 2002. I would say actually it's Elton John actually I really like. Through thick and thin and every decade, it does not matter. I don't know if I have a specific song from him, but he is somebody who is a fantastic artist and just keeps going.
Mm-hmm.
So
he's got so many great songs. So many great songs. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think
now, have you been able to experience his show live?
I have. I saw one of his last shows, pre-COVID, in Toronto. He's got the best outfits, by the way. I think he's 75 years old, and he still puts on the best concert. And I would say that. And Stevie Wonder is, they're sort of always been goodies. And it's sort of, this is what I listened to in the car when I was a kid, and we all argued over the music, but these were things, my sister, my parents, and I could all agree on. So.
On that point, it goes back to what I was saying about those years being so impressionable.
Yeah.
That's what, 10 to 15, 16, 17 years old. That's those most impressionable times, with Elton John. That's a great pick, because I remember my entire life, 51 years old, my entire life, there are Elton John memories. From the time I was like 5 years old, traveling cross country from Montreal to California in a car with an 8-track of Elton John's greatest hits playing the whole time, with Benny and the Jets. And it was just, definitely good pick. You brought back good memories on that one. That was cool.
Yeah, very cool.
All right. Very good answers. Awesome. Thank you so much for being here, Amy. Before we say goodbye, I just want to remind everybody to go to the Henry's Foundation website, henrysfoundation.com. And check out all the services and the amazing things that they do. Amy, I can't thank you enough for doing all that, for starting all that, because I don't know if working through retail through COVID without at least talking about it would have been very successful for me. Sure, Aurora's awesome, but she can only do so much, right? Got to have these other conversations. But thank you so much. Sean, Mark, Aurora, as always, thank you all very much for being here and taking the time and opening up, as Amy said, about your own issues and my own issues. I'm sure we'll have many, many, many more shows down the road to talk about all those amazing moments of our youth that molded us into the amazing people we are today. But until then, and until next time, I hope you all stay well, stay safe, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
Ooh, ooh, ooh.